How does the tech that runs our world really work? We break it down to its fundamental truths. This is First Principles.
Picture this. It is 6 in the morning on a Tuesday. You are deep in a dream, somewhere warm and pleasant, when a gentle vibration on your wrist pulls you back to reality. You open your eyes. The room is dark, but the moment your feet hit the floor, a soft amber glow fades up from the baseboards. You walk to the kitchen. You do not touch a switch, but the coffee machine is already hissing, finishing a brew cycle that started 4 minutes ago. You grab a carton of milk from the refrigerator, and as you close the door, a tiny computer inside the fridge notes the weight change on the shelf and adds milk to a digital shopping list on your phone. You have not spoken a word. You have not pressed a button, yet your home is reacting to you. It is anticipating you. It feels like the house is alive. It feels like magic. We call this the Internet of Things, or IoT. It is the catch-all term for the billions of devices, thermostats, cars, doorbells, factory machines, and heart monitors that are currently chatting away on the Internet, vastly outnumbering the human beings online. We tend to think of this technology as a luxury, a way to be lazy, or perhaps a privacy nightmare. We assume that smart devices are actually smart. We assume that when we ask our speaker to play music, the speaker is the one doing the thinking, but that is not true. The reality is much stranger and more mechanical. How does a sliver of silicon know that you are stressed? How does a light bulb know the sun has gone down? What is the invisible language that allows a door lock in London to open for a command sent from Tokyo? Today, we are going to ignore the marketing buzzwords. We are going to stop looking at the shiny apps on our screens and look instead at the wires, the radio waves, and the microscopic machines that make it all possible. We are going to find out how we gave the Internet a body. I am your host, and this is First Principles. To understand the sheer magnitude of what we are dealing with, we have to look past the smart home. The smart home is just the tip of the iceberg, the part of the Internet of Things that we see. The real revolution is happening in places you are not allowed to go. Right now, deep inside a jet engine, cruising at 35,000 feet, hundreds of sensors are measuring heat, vibration, and pressure. They are not just recording this data, they are streaming it in real time to a server on the ground. Before the plane even lands, the maintenance crew knows that a specific valve is going to fail in 10 hours of flight time. They have the part waiting at the gate. In a cornfield in Iowa, moisture sensors buried in the dirt are talking to a sprinkler system. They are telling the water pumps exactly which rows are thirsty and which are fine, saving millions of gallons of water. In a hospital, a premature baby is wearing a patch no thicker than a bandage. It is monitoring heart rate, oxygen levels, and temperature, and if any of those numbers drift even slightly into the danger zone, the system alerts a nurse before a human eye could ever detect a problem. This is the magic we see. It is a world where the physical environment is responsive, efficient, and seemingly conscious. It is a world where inanimate objects have gained a voice. It creates a seamless experience where we feel like wizards, commanding our environment with nothing but our presence or our voice. But this magic relies on a massive, hidden infrastructure. It relies on a fundamental shift in how we build the world. For most of human history, if you wanted to know something about an object, you had to look at it. If you wanted to change an object, you had to touch it. The physical world and the world of information were completely separate. If a tree fell in the forest and no one was there to hear it, it really didn't make a sound, at least not in terms of data. The information of that event was lost. The Internet of Things is the attempt to bridge that gap. It is the attempt to merge the atoms of the physical world with the bits of the digital world. But before we can understand how we merged these worlds, we have to go back to a time when they were stubbornly distinct. We have to go back to the early days of the Internet, where the only way data got online was if a human being sat down at a keyboard and typed it in. The year was 1982. The place was Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. It was a building filled with some of the brightest computer science students in the world. These students had a problem. It was a trivial problem, but often trivial problems are the mothers of invention. The problem was a Coca-Cola vending machine. The machine was located on the third floor. The students' offices were often far away. These programmers fueled their late-night coding sessions with caffeine, specifically Coke, but there was nothing worse than walking all the way to the machine only to find it empty, or perhaps even worse, finding that it had just been restocked, meaning the cans were warm. In 1982, there was no way to know the state of that machine without physically standing in front of it. The machine was an island. It had no voice. It had no connection to the outside world. So, a few of the students decided to hack it. They installed micro switches inside the machine to sense how many bottles were in each column. Then, they connected those switches to the department's main computer server. They wrote a program that could check the status of the switches. If a column was full, the server knew. If a column was empty, the server knew. But they went a step further. They wrote a script that tracked how long ago the machine had been restocked. If the bottles had been in there for less than 3 hours, the system would flag them as cold. They connected this data to the local network, the precursor to the modern Internet. Now, a student sitting at a terminal on the other side of the building could finger the server and check the status. They could see on their screen Coke, cold, or Coke, empty. This was, arguably, the first Internet of Things device. It was a physical object reporting its state to a digital network. It solved the problem of distance. It solved the problem of uncertainty. But for the next decade or so, this idea remained a novelty. Connecting things to the Internet was hard. Processors were expensive. Sensors were bulky. Radios consumed too much power. You could not just stick a computer inside a light bulb. The computer was the size of a pizza box and cost $1,000. The term Internet of Things wasn't even coined until 1999. A man named Kevin Ashton was working at Procter & Gamble. He was trying to solve a problem with lipstick. Specifically, a popular shade of lipstick that kept selling out in stores. The inventory system said they had plenty in the warehouse, but the store shelves were empty. The data didn't match the reality. Ashton realized that the problem was human data entry. Humans are bad at counting things. We get tired, we make mistakes, we get bored. He proposed putting a tiny radio chip, called an RFID tag, on the lipstick packaging so the shelf could talk to the inventory system. He called his presentation the Internet of Things. His point was simple. Computers needed their own way to gather information. They needed to stop relying on us to tell them what was happening. They needed their own eyes and ears. But even then, it was just a supply chain tool. It wasn't until the smartphone revolution in the late 2000s that things really changed. Smartphones drove down the cost of sensors, batteries, and Wi-Fi chips. Suddenly, the components needed to make things smart became cheap enough to put in a thermostat, a doorbell, or a toy. So, here we are. We have moved from a hacked Coke machine to a world where your toothbrush has Bluetooth. But how does it actually work? How do we get from a physical event, a door opening, a temperature rising, to a digital notification on your phone? To deconstruct this, we need an analogy, and for the Internet of Things, the best analogy is sitting right in your chair. It is you. The Internet of Things is effectively a planetary nervous system. If the cloud, the massive server farms where data is stored, is the brain, then IoT devices are the senses and the muscles. Think about how you interact with the world. First, you have senses. Your eyes detect light, your skin detects temperature, your ears detect sound. These are your inputs. Second, you have a nervous system and a brain. The signal from your eye travels through your optic nerve to your brain, where it is processed. Your brain decides what that signal means. That is a red light, it thinks. Third, you have muscles. Based on the decision, your brain sends a signal to your leg to hit the brake. That is the output. Every single IoT system, no matter how complex, follows this exact three-part structure: perception, processing, and action, or, in engineering terms, sensors, connectivity, and actuators. Let's break open the black box, starting with the first principle, the sensor. The sensor is the translator. It stands at the border between the physical world and the digital world. Its job is to take a physical phenomenon, heat, light, motion, sound, and turn it into an electrical signal. This seems simple, but it is actually profound. The physical world is analog. It is smooth and continuous. Temperature doesn't jump from 70 degrees to 71. It flows through every infinite fraction in between. The digital world, however, is binary. It is ones and zeros. It is jagged and precise. How do we bridge that gap? Let's look at the accelerometer. This is the sensor inside your phone that knows which way is up. It is the reason your screen rotates when you turn your phone sideways. It is the reason your fitness tracker knows you are walking. You might imagine that inside your phone, there is a tiny pendulum swinging around. And in a way, there is. But it is microscopic. We use a technology called MEMS, microelectromechanical systems. Engineers take a piece of silicon, the same stuff computer chips are made of, and they acid etch it into three-dimensional mechanical shapes. Inside that tiny black chip on your phone's circuit board, there is a microscopic structure that looks like a comb. It has tiny fingers of silicon that are anchored to the frame, and other fingers that are free to move, attached to a tiny weight. When you move your phone, momentum keeps the weight still for a split second while the frame moves. This causes the distance between the silicon fingers to change. Now here is the trick. These fingers are capacitors. They store an electrical charge. The amount of charge they can store depends on how close they are to each other. When the distance changes, the voltage changes. So, when you tilt your phone, the microscopic comb shifts, the voltage spikes, and a converter turns that voltage spike into a digital number. That number tells the software, we are tilting left. It is a mechanical machine, carved out of stone, smaller than a grain of sand, sensing the pull of gravity and translating it into math. This is the principle of transduction. Every sensor is a transducer. A microphone has a diaphragm that vibrates with sound waves, changing a magnetic field, creating voltage. A temperature sensor, or thermistor, is a resistor that changes its ability to conduct electricity as it gets hot. The sensor is the eye of the machine, but an eye is useless without an optic nerve. That brings us to the second principle, connectivity and processing. This is where the misconception usually lies. We tend to think that smart devices are doing the thinking themselves. We think the smart bulb has a little brain inside it deciding to change colors. Usually it does not. The device is often just a puppet. The brain is thousands of miles away. When the sensor captures that data, say the temperature in your living room, it has to send it somewhere. This is the connectivity layer. This is the Internet part of the Internet of Things. But here is a problem. Wi-Fi, the stuff your laptop uses, consumes a lot of power. If you put a Wi-Fi chip in a battery-powered door sensor, the battery would die in a week. Wi-Fi is like shouting. It is great for sending big files like movies, but it is exhausting. Most IoT devices only need to whisper. They only need to send a tiny packet of data. Temperature is 72. Door is open. So, engineers developed different languages, different radio protocols. You might have heard of them: Zigbee, Z-Wave, Bluetooth Low Energy, LoRaWAN. These are low-power radio waves. They are designed to travel short distances or send very small amounts of data while sipping battery power. A sensor using these protocols can run on a coin cell battery for years. However, these low-power languages cannot talk to the Internet directly. They need a translator. This is why you often need a hub or a bridge in your smart home. The sensor whispers to the hub in Zigbee, and the hub translates that message into Wi-Fi and shouts it to your router, which sends it to the cloud. And this is where the processing happens: the cloud. The data arrives at a massive data center. This is the brain. The computer servers there take the raw data, temperature is 72, and compare it to the rule you set. If temperature is above 75, turn on the fan. The server makes a decision. It computes the response. It is the intelligence. This allows the device in your home to be cheap and dumb, while the intelligence in the cloud can be infinite and constantly updated. But there is a catch. The speed of light is fast, but it is not infinite. Sending data from your car to a server in Virginia, waiting for a decision and sending it back takes time, maybe only a few hundred milliseconds, but in the world of machines, that is an eternity. If a self-driving car sees a pedestrian, it cannot ask the cloud what to do. By the time the answer comes back, stop, it might be too late. This leads to a fascinating swing back to the local. We call it edge computing. It means moving the brain closer to the sensor. For critical, fast decisions, the processing happens on the device itself, at the edge of the network. The car has a supercomputer in the trunk. It doesn't need the cloud to brake. It uses the cloud to learn, but it uses the edge to act. So, we have sensed the world and we have made a decision. Now comes the final step, the payoff, the actuator. If the sensor is the eye and the processor is the brain, the actuator is the muscle. It is the component that turns the digital decision back into physical action. This is the reverse of the sensor. The sensor turns physical into digital. The actuator turns digital into physical. The most common actuator is the electric motor, but in IoT, we often use something even simpler, the solenoid. A solenoid is a coil of wire with a piece of metal inside it. When you run electricity through the coil, it creates a magnetic field that shoots the metal rod forward. Click. That is the sound of your smart lock. A digital signal came from the cloud, traveled to your door, energized a coil, and physically moved a steel deadbolt. It is the relay switch inside your smart plug that clicks on the lamp. It is the servo motor that adjusts the fins on the air vent. It is the speaker membrane vibrating to create the voice of the assistant. This trilogy, sensor, processor, actuator, is the irreducible core, input, logic, output. Whether it is a toy robot or a nuclear centrifuge, the principle is the same. We have now demystified the machine. We see the accelerometer detecting the tilt, the radio sending the signal, the server making the choice, and the solenoid flipping the switch. But if we stop here, we miss the most important and perhaps the most frightening part of the story. We have to talk about the unseen giant, the thing that actually makes this ecosystem valuable and dangerous. The giant is not the hardware, it is the digital twin. In the early days of IoT, we just wanted remote control. We wanted to turn the light on from the couch, but that is small thinking. The real power of IoT comes when you stop treating the physical object as the main event. In the industrial world, for every physical jet engine, there is a digital twin living in the cloud. This is a virtual replica of the engine, built from the data streaming from those thousands of sensors. The physical engine is flying over the Atlantic. The digital twin is flying in a server in Chicago. Engineers can do things to the digital twin that they could never do to the real one. They can simulate a storm. They can simulate a bird strike. They can fast-forward time to see when the blades will crack. The digital twin allows us to predict the future. This is why your smart thermostat is useful. It isn't just a thermometer. It has built a digital model of your house. It knows how long it takes to heat up your living room on a Tuesday in December. It knows the insulation quality of your walls based on how fast the heat escapes. It has a virtual house inside its brain, and it is experimenting on that virtual house to save you money in the real one. This is the deep aha moment. The Internet of Things is not about connecting things to the Internet. It is about digitizing the physical world. It is about creating a mirror world where we can analyze, search, and optimize reality, just like we analyze, search, and optimize a Google Doc. But this leads us to the critical vulnerability. If the physical world is controlled by the digital world, then the physical world inherits the vulnerabilities of software. Software has bugs, software can be hacked, software can crash. In the old days, if your thermostat broke, it just didn't turn on the heat. Today, if the server goes down, your house might freeze. If a hacker finds a vulnerability in a smart lock, they don't need a crowbar to enter your home, they just need a script. We have corrected the misconception that these devices are smart. We know now they are mostly radios connected to distant brains. But we must also correct the misconception that the Internet of Things is just a convenience. It is an infrastructure dependency. We are weaving the Internet into the concrete and steel of our civilization. We are putting code into our cars, our pacemakers, and our power grids. We are making the world programmable. So, where does this leave us? We started with a vision of magic, a house that knows you, a world that responds to you. We broke it down into silicon combs detecting gravity, radio waves whispering to hubs, and solenoids pushing bolts. We saw how the loop of sensor, processor, and actuator mimics our own biology. The Internet of Things is the moment when the Internet woke up. For 30 years, the Internet was a brain in a jar, completely cut off from the physical world unless a human typed something in. Now it has eyes, it has hands, it can feel the temperature of the soil and the vibration of the street. This matters because it changes our relationship with our environment. We are no longer just inhabitants of the world. We are administrators of it. We are building a planetary nervous system that allows us to listen to the heartbeat of the world and, for better or worse, control it. The next time your lights turn on automatically, don't just see the convenience. Visualize the invisible chain of events. The sensor, the signal, the server, the switch. Remember that you are standing in the middle of a conversation between the physical and the digital, a conversation that is getting louder and more complex every single day. The magic isn't that the light turned on. The magic is that we taught the silicon to see the dark.
You've been listening to First Principles. Until next time, stay curious.